I'd like to start off by saying thank you. It's been a while since I've been here. And as some of you may know, I was one of the original founding members of the Midnight Society. So to be here is a real treat. So thank you for inviting me. Bringing back some of us original members, I think, was a really good idea on you guys' part. Gives the chance to, well, for us to share some of our stories. So, again, thank you for inviting me. I have a really good story for you all tonight that I think you'll like. Maybe two, if you all will allow me. But with that said, and it's been a while since I said this, but submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society. I call this story The Tale of the Prom Queen. Story is about two boys named Greg and Jam. They have gone to a local graveyard. And this is where they hope to find the ghost of a girl who died in a hit-and-run car accident back in May of 1956. Now, the accident happened while she was waiting for her boyfriend to pick her up for prom night. And they scheduled for him to pick her up right there at the graveyard gates. She was actually buried in her prom dress. Since then, there has been a local legend about her. It is said that every year on prom night, the ghost of the prom queen shows up. She stands at the graveyard gates, waiting for her boyfriend to pick her up. The ride to prom that never happened. And these two boys, they run into a pretty girl named Dee Dee. Dee Dee says that she's visiting their town, in which she previously lived in a long time ago. She's bored, doesn't have any friends to associate with while on her visit. Also, she seems eagerly interested in their story. So, they quickly recruit her for their ghost searching mission. And they go to the library, find the information on microfilm about the accident. They then learn the details of the dead girl's story in full. The girl's name was Judy Larson, and her boyfriend's name was Ricky Mitchell. He didn't know he was supposed to pick her up at the cemetery gates on Weaver Street because it was confirmed by his mom that he never got the message. Somehow, he never received the message of where to meet. Then, when Ricky heard what happened to her, he felt so upset that he drove his car off a bridge. And this took his life, killing himself in the process. His body was never recovered. Now Dee Dee sounds shocked that he also died. Why would Dee Dee be shocked to hear this? Well, just after the three of them are finished with their research, they are about to leave the darkened and dimly lit resource center when suddenly they all hear a clunking noise and a slight crash in the room. It is almost like the presence of someone or something else in the room with them. They get really nervous and tense as the sounds of the noises and the footsteps get closer and closer. Then the lights come on, and it is just revealed to be a kind-hearted old librarian. All she decided to do was cordially offer them some tea. It's the least she could do after scaring them. All of those noises just turned out to be the sound of the dishes moving around as she carried them. The next night, the trio decides to help Judy and Ricky get back together. And the only way they decided they could do this was to hold a seance at the lake where Ricky drove off the bridge into, to try and contact Ricky's ghost. They're doing this so they can try and tell Ricky's ghost where to meet Judy, so both spirits can rest in peace. Now, the seance seemed successful at the time, as the three of them sat in a rowboat in the middle of the lake. Then all of a sudden, with a startling shock, they heard the sounds of an old engine coming from the bottom of the lake. Bits and pieces here and there of the rumbling sounds of an engine, as well as bubbles. There was bubbles coming up from the lake. The next night, they go to the cemetery to see if Judy and Ricky were finally reunited. When they show up to the cemetery, the three of them hear wind chimes. Then they see what appears to be a ghost wandering about in the cemetery. Greg approaches the hooded being, and then suddenly they hear boo. Turns out it's just a young man in disguise wearing a hooded robe. He had a flashlight in his hand to make his face glow. turns out this individual was Jam's cousin, Chuck. He explains that Jam asked him to pretend to be the ghost as a joke to give them all a scare. This is because Jam is positive that nothing like a real ghost could ever appear, and it won't ever happen. Then Jam and Chuck explain the prank while laughing the whole time. Now, Greg's furious and ready to fight them. Dee Dee, while being upset and asking for explanations about why their seance from the night before seemed to be successful, but nothing happened. So both Greg and Dee Dee are confused at the moment. They don't know what's going on. Jam and Chuck's prank really put a damper on things. Then all of a sudden the church bells go off, and Chuck points out that a vehicle is approaching. Greg at first thinks it's just a caretaker or somebody just passing by, so he suggests they all run to not get caught for trespassing, since they are in a cemetery at night. Then Dee Dee points out to see who it is, when realizing it's just someone random driving by. Greg is almost ready to pound Jam again, thinking it's just another one of his jokes. But then they realize the vehicle is an old 1950 Chevy, glowing in the moonlight. The driver, he's sporting an old-fashioned greased haircut, kind of like a typical greaser type guy. They notice it's actually Ricky Mitchell. They freak out, but Dee Dee acts like everything is going to be okay. Jam, Greg, and Chuck can't make heads or tails of the reason why Dee Dee is not freaked out. Then Dee Dee prepares to approach the man in the vehicle, like he's no longer a stranger. She then begins to sing along to the music playing from the car radio. She beautifully sings the song "In the Still of the Night." By Fred Paris and the 5 satins. Then all of a sudden, she undoes her ponytail, spins around, and suddenly her clothing transforms into a beautiful blue prom gown. She then stares at them with a thrilled and ecstatic look. She explains to them she knew they could be the ones to help her right from the beginning. Then she explains that she couldn't leave the cemetery unless someone took her with them. And then with their help, they did research with her to find out what happened that night. After so long, she finally found out why Ricky never came. Then with their help, they did the seance to contact Ricky and finally get the message to Ricky on where to pick Judy up for the prom. And she explains to the boys that her boyfriend is finally here to pick her up. So she gets into the car. Then Jam and Chuck seem completely surprised and spooked and freaked out. Meanwhile, Greg just stands and stares with complete shock and calls her Dee Dee. She reveals that Dee Dee is just her nickname because her real name is Judy. This reveals that she was the ghost of the prom queen all along. And she explains to them that her bride is finally here. She thanks the boys for helping her. She promises that she'll never forget them and what they did for her that night. Ricky also thanks them by giving them a thumbs up. Ricky and Judy are now in the car. Ricky puts his arm around Judy and gives her a kiss and starts to drive off to finally go to their prom that they never got to enjoy. The end. I hope you all enjoyed this story. It was one of our favorites back when I was a member of the Midnight Society, and I hope it becomes one of your favorites as well. Well, that ends our story for tonight's meeting of the Midnight Society. If a stranger ever comes up to you for help, will you help? Or will you walk away? You never know what events will unfold. Good night.